In this video, we're going to continue working with our texture in Photoshop for making a PBR material. We're going to make a metalness texture. Picking up from where we left off, we had the original texture, photographic texture that we had reduced to a 1024 by 1024 pixel square, and that will load very efficiently into many rendering engines, especially real-time game engines and such. We had taken a duplicate of that texture and labeled it albedo diffuse texture, which would be a primary color texture in the case of a non-metallic surface that isn't getting most of its tone and brightness from reflectivity. And then we used the levels tool, or the levels adjustment, to make a version of that same texture that was far darker in case we are making a metal texture. And so let's step back and just look at this texture. This could be a painted wood with cracks in it. It could be a metal that has started to rust or that has gotten cracks in it. And in fact, this texture originally came from a picture of metal. So the metal version of the albedo diffuse is more appropriate. However, there are times where textures that started out as a photograph of one type of material can be useful elsewhere. And just looking at this, I can imagine this being useful to me as some sort of aged, painted wooden surface, let's say. So I'm going to keep both of these, both diffuse textures, my albedo diffuse and my albedo diffuse for a metal. I'm going to put them in a new group, and I'll call this my albedo diffuse group, and this will just help me keep my Photoshop file organized. I'm going to make a new group. Let's call this metal and move this outside. In fact, let's call this metalness. I'm going to make a duplicate of my background layer and drop that into my metalness. And now I can close my albedo, and let's call this metalness. Now, the metalness is going to be a bright is very metallic and dark is not very metallic or not metallic at all. And this could often be set with just a single value instead of a texture. If I had a chrome surface, it could be, yes, fully metalness, and that will change the way a PBR rendering engine will shade it and how it will incorporate the albedo and how it will handle kind of the mixing of colors with reflections. However, in this case, let's zoom in on this image and just think about what this is. This has cracks that are disrupted from the primary surface. They may be pigment that has been removed. They may be rust and oxidization that has occurred. But where the surface is black or darker in these cracks, I don't want it to be metal. I'm going to have the metalness be present in the brighter areas and darker and not present in the darker areas. So I think what I want to do is first, I'm going to take out the color of this because I want to think of my metalness as being a grayscale, essentially. It's either bright or it's dark or somewhere in between, but not any shades of tone. So I'm going to go to Image, Adjustments, Desaturate, and that has, for just this layer that's active, it's desaturated it. And now I'm going to Image Adjustments. Let's do our levels again. And let's see, if I were to go take my midpoint and go fully to the left, that means that most of my pixels are bright white or very metal, but it also means that the pixels that were black are now partially metal, and I don't want to lose the deep tone of those pixels. So what if I bring my white point down? At some point, that also pushes pixels that were mostly black, mostly dark, are now getting compressed very much to white. So I think what I want is maybe something in this range, and I'm going to take my gray point and push that a little bit towards black. And what I'm trying to do is preserve some detail in the cracks as being very dark, but take some of the brighter tones that were ambiguous grays and make those much closer to white. So now I have very metal in most areas except in the cracks. And clearly, this texture is different in the upper left to lower right in many parts of the image. So the changes I'm making are not going to be equal across the image. And I could take some time to remedy that and make some more individual adjustments. But let's see if we can't get a global result that we're pleased with. I think this is very nice as a metalness texture. So we have our albedo diffuse textures, we have our metalness textures. These are all going to be loaded in various combinations into our material properties in our rendering engine, sometimes as separate and unique image files, digital image files, and sometimes as channels that are added, kind of combined together in different ways. So in our next video, we're going to make a roughness map, which will tell a rendering engine where to make our texture be more, or excuse me, our reflection be more sharp or be less sharp. Where do we want it to be very mirrored-like or not very mirrored-like? And that will be controlled, much like metalness, through a light and dark material